The image of German soldiers during World War II is often one of precision, discipline and relentless efficiency. Yet behind the stark uniforms and rigid formations, there was a hidden story of desperation, fear and human frailty. Accounts from both the Eastern and Western fronts reveal a startling phenomenon. Some soldiers deliberately inflicted injuries upon themselves. This behaviour was not mere recklessness or cowardice, it was a complex survival strategy born from psychological strain, hopeless assignments, and the brutal realities of war. Understanding why these men risked permanent damage to escape frontline duty gives us a window into the extreme pressures of wartime life and the human instinct to survive, even under the strictest military codes. The unbearable pressure of constant combat made soldiers seek any escape. Frontline service, particularly on the Eastern Front, exposed German soldiers to conditions that tested both mind and body. Temperatures could drop below -30 degrees Celsius, supplies were erratic, and the constant threat of artillery, snipers and encirclement created an almost unrelenting psychological assault. Many soldiers faced orders that placed them in suicidal situations, such as storming fortified positions with minimal support. Under these circumstances, deliberately injuring oneself became a desperate means of survival. A fractured hand or a deep cut could result in evacuation to a field hospital, sparing a soldier from the immediate horrors of combat. Historical records suggest that even minor injuries, when timed correctly, could temporarily remove a soldier from the battlefield without invoking punishment. Fear of stigma and the need for plausible deniability shaped self-inflicted injuries. Inflicting an injury was never simple. It had to appear accidental to avoid court-martial or dishonour. Soldiers learned to feign accidents convincingly, often by mishandling weapons, dropping heavy equipment, or even falling deliberately in a way that would break a limb. German military doctors, pressed to treat countless wounded, sometimes documented ambiguous cases with neutral language, making it difficult for superiors to determine intent. This need for plausible deniability meant that injuries were carefully calculated. A soldier might choose a broken wrist over a severed leg, understanding that the former allowed for a quicker return to duty while still achieving temporary relief from combat stress. Psychological strain drove many to self-harm under unbearable conditions. Post-traumatic stress disorder, then poorly understood, manifested as chronic anxiety, panic and dissociation. Soldiers exposed to relentless shelling or witnessing comrades die in front of them sometimes reached a breaking point where the only perceived escape was through injury. Diaries and letters from the front reveal that the act of injuring oneself was sometimes rationalized as a temporary solution, a pause to gather strength or regain a sense of control in an environment that offered none. In modern terms, these actions were extreme coping mechanisms to deal with extreme circumstances. Ironically, the very conditions that made self-inflicted injuries risky also made them, well, somewhat predictable. Frontline medical resources were limited, but minor injuries could guarantee evacuation and, access to better rations, warmth and rest. Soldiers quickly learned which injuries would warrant field hospital care without triggering suspicion. Even exposure injuries, like frostbite induced by insufficient clothing or prolonged outdoor exposure, were sometimes leveraged deliberately. By understanding which conditions would lead to a temporary removal from duty, soldiers used the system to their advantage without overtly violating military law. Social dynamics within units influence self-injury decisions. Group pressure and shared knowledge also played a role. Soldiers witnessed comrades taking similar measures and observed the consequences, both positive and negative. Units often shared informal advice on safe methods to injure oneself without lasting damage, creating an underground culture of tactical self-harm. This dynamic was particularly evident among younger soldiers drafted from rural communities with little training, who were unprepared for the horrors of modern mechanized warfare. Older, more experienced soldiers sometimes mentored the younger men, teaching them how to survive psychologically and physically when the frontline environment became overwhelming. While precise statistics are elusive, historians agree that self-inflicted injuries were not isolated incidents. Reports from military hospitals, unit records, and court-martial transcripts indicate that deliberate injuries occurred frequently enough to be a recognized problem for German military leadership. Officers often faced the challenge of distinguishing genuine accidents from intentional acts, highlighting the tension between strict military discipline and the reality of human fragility under extreme stress. These accounts provide not just insight into tactics, but into the lived experiences of soldiers confronting unimaginable adversity. Studying why German soldiers intentionally harmed themselves offers broader lessons beyond military history. It illustrates how human beings respond to prolonged stress, hopeless situations, and moral dilemmas. Whether in war, disaster zones, or modern survival contexts, extreme pressure can drive individuals to extreme measures, and survival instincts often outweigh formal rules or social norms. Recognizing these behaviors helps historians, psychologists, and survival enthusiasts alike understand resilience, decision-making, and the fine line between courage and desperation. By exploring the psychological and strategic reasons behind self-inflicted injuries, we gain a deeper appreciation for the human side of war. These acts were not mere cowardice, they were survival strategies crafted in response to unimaginable circumstances. Understanding them provides a nuanced perspective on the experiences of soldiers and the relentless pressures of combat. If this guide shed light on a hidden facet of World War II and inspired you to explore history in new ways, subscribe to In the Beginning and share this video with fellow history enthusiasts. The stories of the past are not just records, they are lessons in survival, resilience, and the complexities of human behavior under extreme conditions.